Hello everyone, my name is Mark Ivers. I'm on the Chrome Enterprise Partnership team, and Citrix is one of our enterprise partners. And today we're going to have a look at the ChromeOS and Citrix USB redirection. So the first thing we need to do is to inspect the USB device. And that is pretty straightforward. On the ChromeOS device, we just open a new Chrome tab and go to Chrome USB internals. I've just plugged in a USB stick. So if we refresh here and switch back to devices, as shown up here, and what we need to note is the vendor ID, also known as VID, and product ID, known as PID. So we have 0324 here, that is SD0X denotes hexadecimal. And I've prepared a little text file here, so we note that here, 0324, and the product ID is BC06. And there is another format where we'll need that later on, so let's prepare that here in advance, 0324 and BC06. We'll need that later. Before we start configuring the settings, I want to go over the basics. We will need to plan a little what we're trying to achieve with the configuration, and we'll go over some of the specific use cases later. First one we'll look at is the operating system. Normally, ChromeOS will handle USB devices directly, but in this case, we will need to release devices we want to redirect for specific applications. In this case, obviously, the Citrix Workspace app for ChromeOS. And in the Citrix Client configuration, we will offer the selected devices to the Citrix sessions. We have the ability to automate redirection or just allow users to manually connect specific devices. And a broader configuration is possible than on the operating system level. Lastly, the policy in Citrix Studio will override client settings, so we'll have a little more centralized control. We can fine-tune behavior based on delivery groups or AD group memberships, etc. And in my opinion, the syntax is a little easier. And obviously, if you have a mixed client based, you can avoid duplication of settings. And it's also quite handy to comment. Let's start with the operating system. So for that, we need to go into our Google Admin Console and go to the WebUSB API Allowed Devices policy. So I've already logged into the admin console under admin.google.com. We're looking at Devices, Chrome Settings. I've selected my OU, and we're on User and Browser Settings. That's the tab that we need to do if we have a logged in user. If we had managed guest sessions, for example, we look at managed guest session settings or kiosk if we need to. But the setting is more or less the same. It's called, as I said, WebUSB API Allowed Devices. So we can just search for USB. And there's only one policy popping up here under the hardware section. Just one point to note, we are in the legacy view at the moment. That's where the policy is. And we already see that I have configured something. So we need to release the USB devices for specific extensions or applications. And the applications are Chrome extensions. And the ID that you can see here, that is the ID for the Citrix Workspace app, the normal GA version of it. There are others out there, as you know from the configuration. So I have some existing VIDs, PIDs here from various devices that I have tested. But if we go back to the text document that we prepared earlier, we already have the ID or IDs of our USB device in the right format. So I can just add another line here, add that, and save. So this would be applied within less than a minute or so to the device. I can refresh policy there as well. But while we're here, I wanted to point out that we can also apply one wildcard. So if we do it like this, the 0324 is the vendor ID. So all OCZ devices could be allow listed like this. For the Citrix Workspace app, we will need to create a new or add an existing JSON configuration. So this is assuming that we already have a working configuration for our Citrix Workspace app. And I have prepared mine, very basic, just a domain in here, nothing else in my preferred text editor. Highly recommend using CodePad text editor. You can collapse and extend brackets in the configuration. Very handy if you have big JSONs to troubleshoot. So what we need to do the USB device configuration for the Citrix Workspace app is to add what we have collected before in the JSON here as well. So that's why I had the second format here, the VID PID. And the section we need to add is shown here. So it's device settings, device rules, and we're going to select auto redirect to have it nice and easy for the user. So let me just put that in here. We'll probably misformat. Yep, that's fine. We can make it nice in here. As I said, a good code level text editor is preferred. So this device settings, let's just copy that and go here, is on the same level as settings version and store settings. So we just pop that in here, remove a few tabs, and because we added a new section, we just add a comma and all the errors are gone. So we have a working configuration that is JSON compliant. Copy that. Obviously, I would recommend that you save those files to edit later in case you need to add something, because in the console, it's not as straightforward. So let's go to the console where we just apply it. It's in apps and extensions, users and browsers, presumably that we want to use it for logged in users. Otherwise, kiosks, managed guest sessions will have the same application, same ID, same settings will apply there. So let's open the Citrix Workspace app that I had selected before. Again, it's assumed that you have it basically working, and we're just adding the USB configuration. So I deleted this before, have a nice clean paste. We just save that here, and it will be applied to the ChromeOS device that are enrolled and in this OU, in my case EMEA, in less than a minute. Let's have a quick look at the Citrix Studio policy. The keyword or wording that we need here is connect. Let's just enter the VID here, 0324, and the PID is BC06. And as I said, the nice thing is we can add a comment, for example, OCZ rel2, and we just copy the whole line. In the Citrix Studio, under Policies, we just click on Edit Policy, and we filter by USB. That makes it a little easier. And two things to note here before we go into the actual configuration. Client USB device redirection has to be allowed. Obviously, that's the big on-off switch. And there are two versions of the client USB device redirections rules. So one isn't specifically noted. Let's call it version 1. That is disabled here. There are no settings. And the newer version is the version 2, where we have advanced features. So that is always preferred with a modern operating system like ChromeOS. That's always kept up to date. So focus on this if you can. I'm calling this out because the version 1 policy will have priority. So if there is a deny all at the end, for example, nothing in here will get processed. So all your configuration work is for nothing. Let's have a quick look in here. It's basically a big text file, and the rules will go through or be processed line by line. Let's just copy what we have prepared before. So this will connect this VID, PID, and we have our nice comment. And Another feature of the commenting is that since we don't actually need this, we have configured this on the client level. Let's disable it here, and I'll show you in the demo later that this will work just fine. But we can control it here. We could make it deny for this device, even though it's allowed on the client. Now that we have everything configured, let's go and test those settings.
So let's have a quick demo of our USB device redirection. I'm on an endpoint that is enrolled into our domain. I'm logged in with a user that is in the OU. Remember, we set it for logged in users, so that's what counts, not where the device actually is. And we're here on Chrome USB internals. If we switch to devices, we can see our device is plugged in. And while we're here, let's have a quick look at the policies. We can see the WebUSB allowed for device URLs is set. There are some entries here. Note they're decimal, not hexadecimal, so don't get confused by that. And it's set for our Chrome extension, that is the Citrix Workspace app. The Citrix Workspace app itself, if we scroll all the way down, also has the settings here on the device. And we can see our BC06 and 0324. The order is reversed, but it doesn't matter. So let's switch to the Citrix Workspace app itself and launch our server. We can already check the connected USB devices here, and we can see the device connected. But I've deliberately chosen about 20-year-old USB stick because it's a little slow to connect, and we can see it show up here in a few seconds. There we are, 2 GB and a bunch of test files. They are now accessible. We can have a look at the device manager as well. And it shows up here as if it were connected natively.
So what use cases can we cover with the USB redirection feature for ChromeOS and Citrix? We've used regular USB storage in the demo as an example, but the dedicated client drive mapping feature is faster. It only requires the users to map each device once, but maybe we can use client drive mapping as a use case if we want to focus on user convenience. We can do USB redirection for a couple of vendor IDs, say you have SanDisk, Kingston, Samsung, etc. in the environment. So if we go back to our Citrix Workspace app configuration, we can change the auto redirect in here by leaving the VID and do an allow list with the wildcard for the PID. So all devices that are on that vendor would be forwarded. And we do that for the vendors we have. And then it can be used by the users. There's a slight hit in the kind of speeds that we're getting for the file transfers, but for a couple of pictures, that's completely fine. The more general use case that we typically have is if we need to do USB redirection as a fallback for devices that might need Windows drivers to work with applications as expected. So the drivers are then supplied in the Windows Server or VDI image. For example, we have that with scales that also have a label printer inside. They're fairly complex. Signature pads for signing checks, etc., and some other things. So the feature allows these peripherals to work as expected for the use cases. So thanks for your attention. If you want to look into this in more detail, so you can have a look at the ChromeOS documentation, which is linked here. And you can always reach out to us at the Chrome Enterprise Partnership team. Thanks.